Hi, everybody. Welcome to Habitat Now. I'm your host, Aaron Shea. It is an honor to have you all join me today, and it's an honor to have our guest of honor, Richard Jolley, who has put together a presentation for all of us to join and explore today. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to like, subscribe, and hit this bell, and share this with anybody who enjoys art. We've been doing these talks well over half a year now, probably since May of last year, and there's a lot of great content on our Habitat Now page on YouTube, talking to artists from around the world. I want to invite Richard to say hello to everybody.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Richard, for being here. So I am going to start and take over your screen real quick. I'm going to send one more person a quick invite who is asked to join. Should take me a matter of seconds here. And then I will go ahead and take over your screen. 2, 1, and those are out. And here we go, share screen. All right, so now you're staring at my screen, I hope. And again, welcome. This is today's. Next week, we'll be doing another Zoom, and we'll get into that too. Let me click this thing. There it goes. So a big thanks to everybody who has joined us today and supported the art, the artist, and the gallery. Everybody, we consider you all part of our family. And we're all looking forward to seeing everybody face to face as soon as it's safe and as soon as possible. So thanks again for joining me every week, and you're always welcome. The Mega Masterworks auction is online right now on Live Auctioneers. It's an amazing collection of artwork featuring the collection of Michael and Annie Belkin. I'm going to be doing a couple of talks about it next week, and then there'll be a talk right before about our favorite pieces in the auction before the auction starts. So mark your calendars. It is February 4th, and go on Live Auctioneers and check out the work now. The long-awaited details about the Glass Coast weekend are coming out right now. So on our website, there's a link with some of the details. The theme is the International Carnivale of Glass. And it's 4th, 5th, and 6th of February, 3-day weekend, different events during the day. There is a small fee of $50 that goes towards a fundraiser for the Imagine Museum. And with that amount, you also get a 6-month membership with an opportunity to expand it. So I'll talk more about this later, but feel free to mark the dates down. Also, during that show, we open up Splash, which is our exhibition online celebrating color and glass. So details about that soon. We're working on putting that together right now, which opens up the day after the auction, February 5th. There's a few left of Katrina Weintraub's Fragile Finger Monsters. They've been selling pretty well. If you've been holding back or thinking about this, they're available right now on Habatat.com Limited. And that's it. So I want to welcome Richard, and I will start your presentation now. We will start with a short video, and let me make sure my computer can share sound, and we will start. Oh, also, this is the artsy exhibition that's on right now. I pasted the link in the chat so you can check it out and look at the available works. All right, here we go.
Hello, I'm Richard Jolley, and welcome to my studio. I know a number of you have come down and seen my studio previously. FERD has brought a group, and also during my museum opening, a number of the AACG people have come. But if you haven't seen it, welcome. I'm going to try to give you a little insight. I started my studio in 1975, and like most of the people at that time, I worked by myself. During this time period of COVID-19, I've gone back to working by myself. So I guess some things come full circle in 50 years. I'm one of the few people around the country that mix and melt my own glass. This is the furnace that I use to mix the glass. And during the making process, these are the benches with the hand tools that we use. And then also the reheating chambers, the glory holes for the making and forming and reheating the piece while at work. Of course, today everything is off. It is sort of a blustery winter day, but this is the general layout of my hot shop. This spring, I've devoted my time to a new series, which I call From Water. These are some of the pieces. What I've tried to do is emulate water forms and capture that frozen moment. In one way, water and glass have the same affinity as far as being fluid materials. And that's one of the things and sort of the essence of all us as humans. We're a great percentage of water. This is the upper part of my studio. Currently, it's my painting and idea development area. I also use it for some fabrication areas. These are some acrylic paintings on Reef DFK that I've worked on. And then I also use this area for working on small prototyping and projects. I think when you see my studio, you can see it's a little bit chaotic, but I feel that art is not linear, and I feel that it is something that you start, you experiment, you observe, and then you finesse, and that is the way I've always worked. One of the things I like about keeping my work around the studio is it gives me a chance to observe them, live with them, and actually become more understanding of them. I think part of the role that I feel an artist has is to try to understand and describe his place in the universe. And by having my work around it, I feel it helps me assimilate this knowledge.
Huh? I don't see it.
Now we're leaving the front part of the studio and coming out to the back work patio. This is where I do a lot of grinding and polishing and handwork and store work. Here's one piece that did not quite make it. But as you well know, the law of averages is nothing goes wrong until it's more than 80% complete. Also, this is where I keep a bronze sculpture.
It's new.
This is a piece that was taken off of a piece of glass and enlarged. I worked with Johnson Atelier. I worked on this bronze in 1993. Well, I've always tried to look at glass as a non-traditional material for making art, and I think it plays into using other materials to emulate the same image, whether it's a piece of glass or bronze. Hopefully it has that same humanism. And as you look at this piece, and these pieces from the 90s, these are actually stacked abstract shapes, almost more than a representation of figurative. You actually can see a female torso here, and then just sort of swaying bulbous forms that create the image.
Okay, thank you for that. That's great. Richard gives you an idea of your work that you. There's an annotation on the screen too. I'm gonna try to get rid of that real quick. I'm not sure how that got there. Let me clear that off. That work did not clear all drawings. Okay. Let's not put more on there, Aaron. Clear all drawings. Okay. Okay. So let's continue on. Did this already? Sorry, I'm having a little trouble here with this PowerPoint presentation. All right, Richard, we're here.
So,
let's go.
So is everyone able to hear me well?
Yep.
Good, good. Thank you for coming out again, and I will let you know that I appreciate the small messages that you send me, but since I am a Zoom illiterate, I do not know how to respond to you, but thank you for your good wishes. Little did I know in 1971, when I first took a glass class at Tusculum College, that it would change my life and lead to a life of creativity. I always like to joke that in the early days, all the tools were clubs. And as I started to observe this picture, probably taken in 1973, you notice in the far right, there is a hatchet on the glass tool board. I have no idea what it was used for. Next. So from the beginning in glass, first glass we melted was a 475 marble, a formula Dominic Labino had developed. Next. And so how did I get from there to here? In December of 1972, Michael Taylor took a group of students to visit a glass factory in Ohio, the Toledo Museum, which had newly installed the Labino panels. And then we went up to the metropolitan Detroit area to visit this new gallery that had started showing glass. It happened to be on Telegraph Road. In my memory, both Ferd, Tom, and Linda were there. And in the 70s was a time of experimentation, trying to figure out how to make work. There was not the knowledge base about material that students receive today. Most of the work was developed by trial and error, and it was rewarding to see a gallery that believed in glass as a suitable material for making art. Next. In 1975, I started my own studio in Tennessee. And since some of you have a tendency to not remember that I am from Tennessee, I have a couple other notable artists next to show you. I like to say this is young Richard with young Elvis. Next. The fabulous Dolly Parton. And Red Grooms. Next. Just out of school, I think you have a tendency to rely on your peers as sort of a sounding block. These are two of the students I went to college with, Helen Nagy and Mel Chin. This is probably in the late 70s in Mel's fifth story walk up on the Bowery. Mel was also always very talented. And I was glad to hear that last year he received a MacArthur Fellowship. Next. I think in about 1983, I stopped blowing glass. And I started working solid. So the first things I worked on were these monoliths. So you can see the narrative images of the Kiss. Next. And other more popular culture items, Taxi. Next. Gladdy and Ross Ferris were some of the, since I think what we have here is a triangle or a three-legged stool, however you want to phrase it. I think you have the artists, the galleries, and the collectors. And I think they all play an integral part in the development of art forms and defining their particular period of time in art history. Gladdy was trained as a opera singer until polyps made her voice impossible to sing. Ross was what I call a turnaround man. He was a businessman who would come into a business that was failing and turn around and make it successful. So he was very knowledgeable about business and how it operated. I had many casual conversations with Ross, and I was always impressed with his acumen as a businessman. And Ross would always ask me a question, what's your 5-year plan? And I had only had one answer for him. I will still be here after 5 years. Next. But they were very instrumental in helping me move my work to the next level through support and collecting my work. I feel like my first mature body of work with these blue line drawings, I'd wanted to move the linear quality from inside the glass to the surface. And I think these were successful. The fawn, referencing youth. Next. And a lot of these pieces were series of nudes. They're sort of Matissean, inspired by the concept of the artist doing drawings in a studio. This piece is owned by the LA County Museum. Next. And as an artist, it's always rewarding to see that once you start to really define your work, that it gains a place of acceptance. This is a shot from a catalog, World Glass Now, in 88 in Hokkaido, Japan. I was invited over as an honored guest. They purchased my work, and so Tommy and I were off for Japan. Next. The back of the catalog. Next. I keep this USA Today newspaper article in my office. I had the opportunity to do an absolute campaign, an absolute ad. Michel Roux was a marketing genius, and he was the one who branded Absolute. His first artist that he worked with was Andy Warhol. And being invited to do an ad and meeting Michel Roux, I was so impressed with his poise and the style and grace that he managed his program. And part of this program that I was involved with helped fund raising funds for DIFA. Now that we're in the COVID generation, it seems like AIDS and things like that has been cured, but it is not. But I think of that time period, it was a very important disease to try to get a scientific handle on. Next. In 1990, I changed my work. As you'll see through my lecture, I have a tendency to work in series. These are the bust series. They first started out as being works of human dignity that I wanted to appear like high polished black marble, and then it sort of schismed into two directions. Next. And also at that time, I did work parallel. This is a monoprint, and I started trying to take my works on paper seriously as far as archiving them and being more conscientious about the type of paper that I drew on. Next. But referencing back to the bust, some became these glassy statements, sort of Baroque statements of technical virtuosity. Next. Both male and female have a very classical feel. And then the other became maquettes for large bronzes and bronzes. Next. In the late 80s, early 90s, we were spending a lot of time in Atlanta. And we just lost one.
Sorry.
And so I came across this other budding artist with the beret. Of course, most of you know Ron and Lisa Brill. We feel fortunate that we were able to meet the Brills. We became friends. They became ardent supporters of my work. And through that, we've known their family and remained friends. We know their sons. We know their grandsons. We participated in Ryan's bar mitzvah this summer, August, over Zoom. And Lisa and I have a special connection because we share the same birthday. And Lisa, I know you would think that Mel Chin is a genius also because he happens to share our birthday also. But through this, I think one of the things that is important is making these friends that become part of your family and it's sort of an enlarged family. Next. Also during this time period, I was fortunate enough for Fred Wiseman and Billy Milam Wiseman to get involved and collect my work. And what I loved is that they put it in the context of their own modern art collection. So in their living room, they would have my work alongside Rothko's, Jean Dubuffet's, Sam Francis's, Noguchi's, Diego Giacometti's. So I love the context that my work as sculpture fit into the modern art realm. Next. In the mid-90s, I started working on these totemic forms. I wanted to bring more narrative back into my work. And this is 9 Views. This was going to be the piece that was in the Venice, Americans in Venice show. However, with the COVID, it was unable to travel. Next. And in referencing that I mix and melt my own colors, this shot and then the next shot show the scope of the polycolors that I'm able to melt in my furnace. Polychromatic colors. Excuse me. Next. Also along the way, you're able to meet other fabulous artists. This is a photograph by Greg Gorman. Greg Gorman is sort of the Harrell of his generation. We had gone out to a wedding in Los Angeles, and Greg had invited us over for lunch. And after lunch, he invited us to have our portraits taken. And as John Waters says, Greg Gorman is the only one that can take a photograph of my corpse because he can make anybody look good. And he made up.
You guys look beautiful.
Next. In approximately 2000, we started working with the co-curated by the Knoxville Art Museum and the Ogden Museum of Art in New Orleans, started working on a Richard Jolley Sculpture of Glass retrospective. And this is, after the totems, I started working on a new series I called Tabula Rasa, where the upper part is made in two parts. The lower part has a traditional batuto cut, and the upper part, I developed this direct drawing where I torched the surface of the glass and actually carve these bas-relief images in the glass. Next. And again, these pieces were double-sided. Next. Some being the black nickel glass and other being polychromatic. Next. I think it's always important to try to surround yourself with powerful women. They for world. Next. And one of these ladies was, her family founded the New York Times. I love my irascible friends, John Lewis. Next. I love my flamboyant friends, Joyce Scott. She also received a MacArthur grant in the past couple years. Next. In the early, I always work on a multiplicity of series at the same time, but in the early 90s, a certain amount of my work became much more a mixed material. I worked on this body of work right after we got back from doing a residency in Australia. And this figure, next, has all these little stainless steel screws are constellations that mark out my wife's and my cosmic spirals. Next. I also was working on pieces, silhouettes, sort of pieces about solitude. I noticed someone on the Zoom call owns this piece. Next. This is a suspended figure. It's also a wall piece. It's the silhouette of a male and female figure symbolically with the silhouette of a boat referencing the voyage of life. Next. And also I sort of play off ideas of one work shifts to another. Again, this is sort of a suspended male figure. So this is actually taken off a silhouette of myself. It's a veiled aluminum box with a glass front with copper and gold leaf. And it's actually more of a Four Seasons where this is only a singular piece. There are actually four of these figures in another sun or moon form. And these are 8 feet by 2 feet. And so they stack up and they're very vibratory. Next. Also in the early 2000s, I feel lucky enough to have a monograph written by Sam Hunter about myself. He was well, going to art school, he wrote one of the surveys. So it's always impressive to meet those that are very articulate. He was a Pollock scholar, Pollock and Larry Rivers scholar. He was an early curator at the Museum of Modern Art. He also worked at the Guggenheim Museum in Venice to document the Pollocks. But it was great being interviewed by him and sitting around after dinner, having that extra glass of wine or that spot of grappa, and talk with him about the artists and going to the Cedar Bar and seeing Pollock and de Kooning and all the other giants of abstract expressionism. And I think all these things sort of give you a validity to feel that hopefully you can also have your position in American art as history moves forward. Next. The director of the Knoxville Opera Company had seen an article in the newspaper while flying about my museum retrospective. And so he invited me to design a stage set for the Magic Flute. And I think he wanted it to be all of glass. And I told him that it would be a lifelong project to be able to make things of this scale. But it gave me a great opportunity to work with professionals and seeing the dedication that people of other disciplines had about their work. Just flip through about these 5 slides, please. These were stage sets. I did small scale drawings, and then we did computer enlargements to do these larger plexiglass figures. So actually the temple dome is also plexiglass with a printed mylar. And I believe this, the stage set is owned by the Indianapolis Opera Company right now. I think in working as an artist, you do work and you don't necessarily know why you do it. And then sometimes 10 years later or something, it becomes a very key component in an additional work that you do. I'll try to interweave that as we go further through the lecture. Next. And these are all acrylic on paper, so these are approximately 8 feet in height. Also with these, I had worked with a gentleman out in Portland, and we cast them into glass panels. Next. It's always interesting to see your work when it's formally shot in your studio. Next. And then actually has a home where it is installed in a house, and it just has a completely different feel to it. Next. This is the catalog from the gallery show. You see again the large black and white, the Translating Substance series that I had with Ferd in 2006. And we sent a copy of this to Elton John. And one day, Debbie answered the phone, and the voice on the other end said, I'd like to get a Richard Jolley. This is Elton John. And Debbie thought it was Rob or somebody else just calling and pranking on her. And then she finally realized that it was Elton John. And so right after she got off the phone, she gleefully called me and was so happy that she was able to talk to Elton John. But when we were in the early 90s, when we were spending a lot of time with the Brills also, Elton John was very interested in my work and acquired a number of pieces, probably over 40. But also we were involved in his the start of his AIDS fundraiser, which was the first 2 years in Atlanta prior to moving out to Los Angeles. Next. Again, another shot of works on paper in a fabulous home. Next. And again, this is the Translating Substance. During this time period, I did a lot of just monochromatic solid black work. Actually, it's sort of a pearlescent gray. It's a nickel formatted glass. But I love the elegance and formality of the single colored pieces. Next. Also, we're talking about friends. Everyone, I think most of the people there would know Richard Sloan. I love the fact that he would entertain people, and he would take a lot of us artists out. And at the end of the night, we would pretend like we were drunk and have the waiter take a photograph, lay our heads down on the table. And of course, you see that there always has to be one recalcitrant artist that will not follow the rules. Here's Clifford. Next. And in working on my work, we had gone to the Guggenheim Museum, and there was a David Smith, some small David Smith cut welded steel sculptures. And I was staring at them, and I realized that they were art talking about art as a reflection of Cezanne landscapes. And in thinking about that, I started wanting to anchor my figures in my narrative more in space and in our terra firma. So hence the garden, sort of these figures anchored in this bucolic sort of fantasy world. Next. This is everything in the cosmos. You always wonder how these things look. Actually, this is about 9 feet by 9 feet. If you look at the exterior of the piece, these are actually constellations, and sort of working on a theme that I go back and forth with is earth and sky. Next. And with your artwork, you have an opportunity to meet a lot of very interesting, high-powered businessmen. This is purchased by Larry and Clara Silverstein. It's in the World Trade No. 7. That was the first World Trade tower to be built afterwards. And because of this, we got to know he and his wife and Mickey and Janice Cooperman. But I think the important thing about it is that I think you meet all these men that are so successful, and the affinity they really have with artists is that they realize that you are an ultimate risk taker. And they have also done this to create their world and their business. Next. This is metaphysical. It's in honor of my father passing. Next. I've always loved still life, sort of memento moris. This is a sort of my most recent series of ones. I believe also Larry and Clara own this piece. Next. Also, you have an opportunity to meet these fabulous artists along the way. Victor Rash, the ex-mayor of Knoxville, where we live, became the ambassador to Poland. And we'd see him at these cocktail parties, and he'd say, "Oh, you should come over and visit." And after about the 5th time he said that to us, we looked at each other and we said, "When will we know another ambassador?" And so we said, and they said, "Oh, come, stay at the diplomatic residency with us." So we went over and had a fabulous visit. Magdalena Abakanowicz is the grande dame of Polish sculpture. She actually passed away about a year or so ago. But we had some collector friends that were from Milwaukee that helped support her project Angora that's in the south end of Grant Park. And somehow we were talking with them and they said, "Oh, would you like to have a meeting with her?" They may have said audience, which truly it is that. But we went over and spent a long afternoon with her, moving on into the evening. And as we were closing down our visit, I was chatting with her and I said, well, you know, we had talked about her galleries and representation, and she shows with Marlborough Gallery. And I said, well, have you ever thought about moving to America? And she said, "Oh no, it would be too easy." And I think this is a perfect example of sort of the academic rigor that most successful artists have in viewing and knowing how to make their work. Next. The Knoxville Museum of Art, an Edward Larrabee Barnes structure clad with Tennessee pink marble. And this is the start of a great story about a commission. Next. This is Ann and Steve Bailey. They live here in Knoxville. They are, we've known them since the mid-'80s. So we've had a long time relationship with them. Next. And Steve was very active in the museum at this time period. And this is the Great Hall at the Knoxville Museum. It's the largest public space. Now it's the Stephen Ann Bailey Hall. But Steve would always go in and he would say probably something with an explicative, "Where's the art?" But so over cocktails one evening, we were talking and he said, "Well, you should do something for the museum." And along with the museum director, David Butler, we started on a course and a path to create a site-specific work of art for the museum. Next. Next. So this is 104 running feet, and the ceiling is 22 feet tall. It's approximately, there are 6 earth icons and 2 sky icons. So it is, this is the number 6, but it's sense of place, emergence, flight, and then we have desire, tree of life, contemplation. And then as we go to the sky, we have a metaphysical part of the sky and then a constellation part of the sky. Continue. You can kind of clip through the next few in sort of a slow pace. Close up of constellation part of sky. This is myself with David Butler. And this is the first part that you see as you come into the museum. And this is one of the more romantic views. It's an exterior from shot from across a plaza. Next. And yes, there was some construction involved. To my left is James Breed, who is my lead assistant on this project. Next. Here we are installing part of contemplation. It was the largest singular piece on the project, which weighed virtually a ton in itself. Next. And then The Cycle of Life Within the Power of Dreams and the Wonder of Infinity. This was a book that we worked with Snapped Editions and had printed over in Italy, but a fabulous documentation. Next. This is sort of a sections on friends and travel. One of my first teaching residencies was at the Sydney College of Art. This is Tommy and I with Jane Gavin and her son. Next. This is a dinner party that Dan Klein had when I was teaching up at Northlands in Scotland. And Dan was a great champion of glass and a great champion for British and Scottish glass, European glass in general. But it was fabulous, fabulously influential. Next. We'd gone to Balford Castle before we started teaching, and where else would you find this sconce with a deer head and Christmas tree lights in them? I love these quirky images. Fabulous green, tropical color. Next. Teaching gives you an opportunity to try to give back. This is teaching in just outside of Istanbul on the west side. These are all my students, except probably some of you recognize Michael. And this was the first time I met Michael and Tim Tate teaching at the school together. Next. After teaching, we traveled around Turkey, and there are fabulous parts of the Cradles of Civilization. This is at Ephesus. And I always am confused by genuine fake watches. So I think we always have an illusion of what is real and what is genuine, but maybe fake can be genuine also. Next. This is teaching in Swaziland. This is something that Peter organized. Next. At home in Knoxville, we try to be part of our community and use the arts as an educational tool to make persons' worlds larger. These are a couple of students that we've had. We got involved with the Community School for the Arts, which is an after-school program for at-risk kids. I always hate that word, but I think in risk of what? Success. But anyway, I see we always have had these bright young men and women come through, and we try to use glass as a tool to teach about science, teamwork, problem solving. Next. And about 6 or 8 years ago, we got involved with Beaumont third graders. And so I took off a lead from the Corning Museum of Glass doing a design and make where all the kids come in with their pictures, and I pick out one or two to make just so they can see that transformation from a drawing to a 3D object. And you can see the intensity of people looking, going like, I don't think so. Whoa, that's it. But I think this gives the kids an opportunity of a real life experience and hopefully making their worldview larger. Next. And we try to have everybody be a participant. We poke it, we touch it, we just try not to burn ourselves. That has not happened yet. Next. And the last year, we were unable to do it this past year because of COVID, but we had a physically special person come in. And as I always tell people, when I choose the photographs, or the drawings, I do it as an arbitrary thing because, of course, everyone wants their piece made. And so I happened to look out in the corner of my eye and see his. And the delightful thing to know was that when I picked his drawing, all the students felt like, yay, he picked Benji's drawing. And so I think there is some compassion in the world, even though sometimes we don't think there is. Next. So this year, because we were unable to do some things with our students, we put our thinking caps on and decided to try to make these COVID-19 blue sky bunnies. And I partnered with all my galleries around the country, but I'm especially proud of my local gallery that we partnered with. We were able to raise more than $16,000, and a person also matched that. So with that, I think in this time there's a great need, and this went to Second Harvest, and hopefully this has helped out a little bit during this time period. Next. I always, when talking with collectors and lecturing, I always, and I referenced it a little bit earlier, I like to always have a picture of Gowdy in my work, because Gowdy had one patron his entire career. And without that one patron, the whole face of Barcelona would be different today. And I think it is very important to recognize the role that serious collectors and supporters of the arts can make a difference, and a major difference, in artists' lives and work. Next. Cradles of Civilization are very fascinating. Here we are looking at the Wailing Wall, the West Wall in Jerusalem. Next. I love Italy. I love my culture and the culture that I have come from, and it's sort of a source and a wellspring for my work. So here you can have fabulous classical frescoes. Next. And in the middle of it, you can have this fabulous pop art. This is in Piazza Navona on June 6th, the Little Epiphany. And so here you have these great balloons, and then right next to it, you have a great Bernini fountain. Next. This is one of my favorite Berninis. It's this little chapel next to Quattrofontane, and it is the perfect, and I mean perfect, oval dome. And I think as an artist, you try for visual perfection at all times, and it's great to see that some people achieve it occasionally. Next. This is one of our traveling friends, Larry Brady. We've gone to a lot of great places together. This is down a small alley in Venice somewhere. Next. And in 2010, we're invited by Adriano Barango to come over and come to his studio factory and start to work. And we usually come over in the wintertime. And through that time period, we feel lucky enough that we've been able to get to spend some time with Lino and get to know a little bit about Murano. Next. This was the crew the first year I came. Adriano Barango on the right. Marco in the center was my, he's a gaffer in himself, but was my lead assistant. And this is Silvano Signoretto, that is Pino's younger brother. Next. And when I work in Venice, I try to bring some things that I consider what I call iconically Jolley, and yet try to use some very traditional Venetian techniques. And this is a leafing technique of gold leaf in the bust. Next. And during this time period, Lino would come over on Saturday or see us during the week, stick his head in this hot shop and say, "Hey, Richard, why don't we go for a cup of coffee on Saturday?" And so us as Americans, you think a cup of coffee means have a cup of coffee and run. A cup of coffee with Lino means having a cup of coffee at about 4 or 5 places. And then late in the afternoon, somehow meeting up with Lena. And then Lena says, okay, Lena, it's time to go home now. But a great opportunity. I've always been fascinated by materials. While Tommy and I were dining one night having sepia de nero, I saw the line quality of a spilt piece of pasta on a linen tablecloth. And recently I had read a book about colorants and colorations and realized that some of the early inks were made from milking mollusks. So I decided that I wanted to do some sepia de nero paintings next, or drawings. So here I am drawing with pasta. Next. This is Andrea. This is my last visit to Murano. He's the head maestro there. And here we have these large scale organic blue line drawings with gold leaf, sort of having the texture of water, which in some ways leads to my From Water series. I think everything sort of evolves and rolls from various things that you do. Next. And my wife, Tommy, and I had an opening in Venice. Next. And it's great to have the opportunity to meet with peers that you highly respect. Ai Weiwei, June Plenza, Tony Craig, to mention a few. Next. This is one of my favorite views of Venice. This is the a view from the Accademia Bridge looking at the Salute, the cathedral. And this was built to celebrate the plague leaving Venice. And Lisa, the day of Salute is celebrated on our birthday also. Next. This is a section about commissions. This actually was not a commission, but I love to think that it was. Ferd was bringing a group of folks to visit the studio. And so during the time period, I was doing these translating substance drawings. And so we got our fabulous pastry studio to make this fabulous chocolate raspberry filled cake and have a design of my work on it. Next. I think truly I can say that I probably may be one of the only artists in history that has been commissioned to design a bowling ball. We can take that up later in a conversation. But this was designed next for someone's 50th birthday. I think they're on the call also, Rob and June. A lot of commissions I do have evolved through the years. This was a piece that originally was over a dining room table, and now it's been donated to the Bergstrom Mahler Museum. Next. And it's always great when you have opportunity to do commissions and also be friends with the commission, people who do the commission. I had a friend that wanted to do a piece. She had a Kenneth Nolan and a Helen Frankenthaler, and she was concerned with degradation of light. So she wanted something in her living room to replace those. Next. And so this is the piece that I worked on for that. Next. I think a lot of my work with my birds is sort of about respite. I think this is a perfect atmosphere. This is a room for quietude at a spa at Blackberry Farm, which is a local Relay and Chateau property, but I think it just blends in very well with the atmosphere and the sereneness of the room. Next. And this is commissioned water sounds. These are reflective pieces. This is in the entry of Blackberry Mountain, a sister property. Next. This is a recent commission. I have some friends that have spent about 3 years redoing their house, and they had used this French Defournay wallpaper, and they were wanting something that related to it without detracting from it. And so this is a bird piece that I made with steel and gold leaf that is coexists very well with the DeFornay wallpaper. Next. I spoke a little bit about my series that I worked on in the spring, From Water, and talking about sort of the essences of water. But I think also with COVID-19, one of the stimuli for working on this piece is that we all feel like we're in somewhat of this nebulous, frozen, wavy quasi-time where it's extremely slow and yet it speeds up and extremely slow. And hopefully some of the essence of that feel is also captured in these pieces. This is one of the larger ones that I made. It's my life size as far as the height. And I've been working, trying to have things emulate water. And then yet, when you look at them also, I feel like this piece emulates jade. Next. And again, using similar colors, but trying to tone them and have different feels with each piece of the series. Next. This is probably one of the first bodies of work I worked on when I started developing the leafing technique, bust on plinth, coming back from working in Italy. And to me, it's sort of reflective of cairns and things like that. And also in the Jewish faith, when you leave a stone or leave a marker on a graveside, I feel that this is sort of part of the essence of this piece, remembering and leaving a reminder. And so for about 40 years, I had always tried to get my glass perfectly cleaned and no bubbles, no nothing. And now with a fair amount of my work, I try to have this bubble-laden work that takes on this opaline figure, and with certain colors, it has certain gestures that are developed from the dipping and gathering and rotating of the glass. This is a larger scale bust. Next. Also, in my experimentation with the surface, this is Scavo. The Italians developed this chemical treatment probably to emulate Etruscan pieces that they would sell on the souvenir market. I try to apply it in a much more crusty vein, and it has the feel of almost like a rich velvet or a richly textured ceramic piece. Next. This is a bouquet. This is, if anyone has room for a 10.5-foot piece in their house, this would be a great piece for you. This is one of the first pieces I made as I started to familiarize myself and make myself comfortable in working on my museum project. And I believe I've shown it once. Next. But I have a tendency to be a hoarder, so I've kept it in my studio. Here again, another smaller of the dove, the respite with the pomegranates. Next. As you can see, hoarding in my studio, here you see the piece in the background. This is a bronze dog that I worked on, and this is my niece on it to show you scale, but a shot from around the studio. Next. I've recently been trying to do some portraiture. This is a talented young conductor. This is an unfinished piece, but this is from a luncheon I had with him a couple years ago. Next. And also in working on watercolors, this is a twilight landscape. So I've been doing some landscapes that are on the standard 30 by 22 size watercolor paper. Next. This is a smaller bird wall piece, approximately 20 by 20, that has, again, the Scavo feel and some gold leaf in the male bird. Recently, I've started making wrens and dogwoods. Next. View from here, a little more introspective work again. Next. But with the Wrens and Dogwoods, I've had wrens nesting in my studio ever since 1975. And usually, and I've just sort of let it go. Now I have several families each year, and I decided instead of cursing them for defecating on my works on paper, that I would embrace them and use them as models for my glass. Next. So these are silver leafed with an iridescent surface with tinting. And you can see how some of the tonal qualities from my body of work in the spring has shifted over to this body also. Next. And everyone talks about what's going on in the future, because I think we all are ready to get back to it. Aram Demarjian, the conductor of the Knoxville Orchestra, was so impressed with my museum project that he commissioned a composer to write a concerto. And it's exciting. It was going to be in May of 20, but that has been postponed. I believe it'll be rescheduled sometime in the 22 season. We'll let you know when it happens. But with that said, as this being one of the elements, Carol Savignon, who produces Craft in America, they're going to come in the next few months and shoot a series that is called Harmony, and it relates to physical objects and music. And so my part will be about how my work played to inspire music. Next. I always like to end my lectures with this sarcophagus from Postum. And I don't know the exact meaning, but symbolically for me as an artist, I think you have to believe in yourself, dive off, and start to do it. And thank you for coming. I guess Aaron will open it to questions possibly.
That's a good idea. I like that idea. So thank you, Richard, so much for that presentation. I learned a lot. I do have a couple questions for you. First one is the COVID-related bunny works that you did. Are you still doing that? Is that over? What's the process for that now, if it's possible?
I think it's over.
Okay, just making sure.
I haven't made any, in a recent, in special situations of need. Yes, I would try to do some more, because it is we are not over food insecurity, as they would say politely at this point in the COVID. So right. I would be open to possibly doing others.
Okay, good to know.
There are none physically available as we speak. It would need to be, commissioned, so to speak.
Right, made to order, as we say in the business. How long did it take from beginning to end to do the museum installation, from concept to actually getting it installed and done?
Basically, approximately 5 years. The first year I worked trying to figure out how to do the large figures and getting that technique down. And then it started varying from having, 2 assistants up to about 8 assistants, where one of the things that the Bailey said is they didn't want me to completely stop my other art making practice. So for the, like the first year, I probably worked on it 60%, the second year, 70-ish, for the next couple of years, year 2, year 3, year 4 is probably 80%, and year 5 was flat out 100% just running at it. So and as far as the installation, one of the stipulations I put on myself was to try to design the work that it could be installed within 4 months, and we were able to achieve that.
That's great. My question is, when you do a commission, especially one that's larger scale, do you do a rendering or drawing to scale usually, or do you have like a system where you represents the scale for it? Like if I had a big wall and said, hey, Richard, I have a 14 by 14 wall. How can you help me visualize what your plans are?
Mhm. I mean, I think it works a lot of ways. I mean, one way is for somebody to say, oh, I really like this work, like elements of this piece that I saw of yours. And so that gives you like a solid footing of some place to start. It sort of varies where I will do small drawings, you know, sort of line drawings, really very much like the sort of seems like simplistic acrylic drawings. And I realized I did not bring that point up, but when you go back and look on the black and white busts and things that I saw became critical, those are actually the key hub for using to design these the large glass figures in the museum project. But basically, you know, having conversations, if it is feasible to be able to visit the site, it's always easy. Also, you can do it through a lot of photographs. I actually am fairly skilled at reading blueprints and have an understanding about how things work. And so sometimes it's sort of a combination of elements that people have liked from my previous work to working on something new. And definitely like the most recent work with the DeForney wallpaper, there was sort of a very specific process we needed to go through to get the piece to match the space and be the right amount of art for the background.
Gotcha. Okay, another question. Is Richard's sculpture next to me, which is this piece right here, paying homage to Jewish custom or influenced by Fujita? The overlaying color of this like for stone reminds me of him.
You know, Fujita, actually, when we went to World Glass Now in '88 in Hokkaido, I got an opportunity to meet Fujita. Definitely, he made a lot of ceremonial boxes that used leaf. I do not feel that they are reference his work specifically. I mean, there's a long tradition of using leaf in Italian glass. And as far as specifically that Jewish remembrance, it's no, but it's a porthole to understanding sort of the concept of thought and remembrance in a format, as opposed to specifically using a religious narrative, but it is sort of something that runs parallel. It's like the cairns that are the stack stones that are in Scotland. I always thought they were more like a Boy Scout markers of, oh, go this way. But no, it also with sort of a remembrance of those who had not come home from their voyages and whatever they were doing out having battles and, you know, getting lost or drowned in the North Sea or whatever, for whatever reason they did not come home.
Gotcha. Well, I got one more question for you, but I'd like to open up the floor. If anybody has any comments or questions, feel free to unmute yourself. That being said, let's say COVID ends tomorrow and we're all free. Where in the world would you travel next? You're heavily influenced by, you know, travel and experiences. Where would you go?
Well, probably over to Europe. Try to, you know, probably go to Venice and maybe try to go somewhere else after that.
Yeah, we'd all love to go with you. That's for sure. I loved seeing your watercolors. I haven't seen much of your watercolor work. I saw a couple of them on Artsy. I'm really grateful you were able to share your bowling ball with us. That was awesome. I did catch a comment during your talk that I thought sounds like a great name for an exhibition called Iconically Jolley. I thought that was very fun. We should put that one on paper somewhere. Well, thank you, Richard, for joining us today. And like I said, if anybody has any questions, this will be the time, or feel free to unmute yourself and say hi, goodbye.
When you get to Europe, come see us in France.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Thanks.
Richard.
Was
That was
You're
wonderful, Richard. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Early, good to see you.
Diana, Rick.
Thank you, Richard. That was wonderful.
Wonderful.
Great presentation.
Good job, Richard.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Richard and
Richard.
Aaron.
Thanks so
Wonderful.
much.
Be
Thank you,
well, everyone.
Richard.
Thank you,
Say hello
Richard.
to Tommy.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Wonderful presentation, Richard.
Everyone.
Thanks, Richard.
Real enjoyable.
Hey,
Hey,
Zeke.
Rick.
Hope you get Better.
Thanks, Richard. That was fantastic.
Hey,
Richard?
Sid. Hey,
Hey, how are you? Say hi to Tommy too.
dude.
Hey, Richard,
Yes.
Yes.
question for you.
Oh, hey.
Hi. Can we hear me? Or
We
you-
can hear you. Got you, Deb. Hey, John.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Question for you. Has there been any creative epiphany that you've had or particular unique inspiration through COVID? Are you going to come out of this with was there a creative epiphany of any sort that you had through this period?
My creative epiphany, being able to eat Tommy's flatbread, which is
That's a gastronomic epiphany.
Save some for us all. That's funny.
and also I'm a connoisseur of Negronis.
There you go. We've had a few ourselves.
Hey,
Well,
good, Sylvia.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
all right, everybody. Be well. Thanks for joining us. See you all next week.
Richard,
And, be
Richard,
well.
and
Bye.
Tommy,
Bye-bye.
Lisa,
Take care.
thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. It was the best, the best.
This
I
will be
hope I
posted up.
get to see you soon.
This will be posted up on YouTube. Feel free to share it with those that missed it. Bye, everybody. See you soon. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.